The problem I had at 24 was that I really didn't have my life together. I was uncertain about so many things, but one thing I knew for sure was that in 10 years, I'd finally have it all figured out. The problem I now have at 34, however, is that 24-year-old me was wrong. They say your 20s can be a confusing time, and I have to agree. However, it sort of implies that it's fine because by your 30s you'll have it all figured out, and that's not entirely true. In your 20s, you're having to decide what you want to do with your life whilst figuring out your passions and juggling trying to earn money whilst also maintaining a social life and trying to save, at the same time being told you need to think about when you're older while still feeling pretty young. It's a lot, and it's not too dissimilar to how it feels in your 30s. The same but different. It's a bit like the saying, more money, more problems, except it's more age, more time for reflection, more room for existential crisis. Okay, so it doesn't quite have the same ring to it, but you get the gist. Now, don't get me wrong, things do improve a lot, and if you're in your 20s and already freaking out, do not worry. And if you're stressing out that you don't feel ready to join the 30s club because you haven't ticked all the things off the list of getting your life together, fret not. It's a scam. And the majority of us are out here looking like we've got it all together, but I assure you, we do not. When I was younger, I really thought adults were so wise. And in many respects, in comparison to my undeveloped child brain, they probably were. Well, some were. By age 20, I felt so grown up compared to child me, yet so young compared to anyone above the age of 30. People in their 30s had houses and spouses and kids and careers and money, and I had student debt and a shopping problem. One of the key distinctions I could sense between myself and those older than me, or what I thought, is that they knew what they wanted and had made clear choices, and most importantly, they had eventually figured things out and become fully fledged adults. So for much of my 20s, I found solace in this fact. I might not know what I'm doing now, but by 30, I'll have figured things out too. But suddenly I was 25, fast approaching the latter half of my 20s, and still none the wiser. Sure, I'd made some progression, but was it enough? Was I where I was supposed to be? Was I on the right path? I really wasn't sure. I found myself looking side to side at my peers in panic, searching for the answers. The only comfort was that all my friends seemed just as confused as I was. We were sort of seemingly nonchalant, bobbing along, enjoying life, avoiding the inevitable of having to get our lives together. Online, however, life seemed full of 20-something overachievers who had started their first business at 18, become millionaires by 23, or had invested in the housing market early, and now they were building their mansion dream home at 26. I didn't let this get to me too much though. I assured myself I still had time to shine in my late 20s before it was too late, until one day I was 29. And I realised I was never going to be one of the people who achieved astronomical success young or make the Forbes 30 under 30 list. And if I'm completely honest, I'm still not entirely sure what that is or what it means, but I just know that to 20-something-year-old me, it sounded kind of cool. On the more conventional side of things, I also hadn't ticked all the boxes society says you need to tick, nor did I have them all in line ready to tick the moment I turned 30. And whilst I knew I had some time to figure things out, I was also feeling completely confused if I even wanted all those things. I had a house and a husband, and sometimes I still didn't feel grown up enough for that. So before I knew it, I was in my late 20s, about to enter my 30s, feeling like I wasn't where I was supposed to be, hadn't achieved all I was supposed to achieve, and now I was going to have to be a proper adult in a sea of 30-somethings who were all meant to know what they were doing. Now, the irony is, now that I'm in my 30s, I have access to something that 20-odd-year-old Samio did not, and that is access to an abundance of 30-plus-year-old peers in a plethora of different life circumstances to converse with on a regular basis and find out that nobody has it all figured out. I'm not sure if that is meant to be comforting or distressing. A bunch of seemingly responsible adults who are doing important jobs, raising kids, renovating homes and so on, but actually you really do just figure things out as you go. It's like a learn-on-the-job type scenario. And don't get me wrong, you do get to a point where you do feel like you've mastered things in certain areas of your life, but usually whilst that plate is spinning, you've lightly dropped another one, or just as you think you found that balance, life comes along and throws a little curveball and you're back figuring it all out again. I don't even say this to be a negative. If things were going swimmingly all the time with zero decisions or choices to be made, things would get kind of boring, don't you think? I know when I finally reached 30, it actually felt like a bit of a relief, in some ways. All this expectation I'd put on myself to have achieved so much before the big 3-0 was now gone. It could no longer be done, and I was actually fine with it. You realise you have more time to achieve your goals, and you don't actually have to do it all by a certain number. But then you enter your 30s and new pressures arise. I know a big challenge for a lot of people entering their 30s is feeling the pressure of a new timeline that usually revolves around getting married, having kids, and trying to get on the property ladder if they haven't done these things already. You quickly realise that your 30s can still be quite confusing, especially if you're grappling with the idea of what you think you want to do with this next chapter of your life and what society is telling you you should do with this next chapter of your life. The goalposts have shifted, and now you realise you're on a new timeline of things to do before 40. I have friends who have achieved success, friends who have ticked all the societal boxes, and others who feel like they're just getting started. But one thing I realise we all have in common is none of us have all the answers, and we still each have moments of wondering, what the heck am I doing? Some of us can look like we have it all together, and some days we can genuinely feel like we do. And that's great, but it's also completely normal to have those days that feel the complete opposite. One thing I have come to realise is that everyone has their own challenges that they have to face and problems they have to overcome, no matter what your situation. As humans, I think we want to feel like we can control all outcomes and make everything foolproof. But of course, life really doesn't work like that. And yes, things can become easier as we learn and grow, but we still have to ride the waves of ups and downs that can come along at any age. One thing age does give us is more experience, and that can really help with riding some of those waves. The first few years of my 30s I found to be quite confusing. I certainly wouldn't say I have everything figured out now by any means, but what I would say is I feel more content in where I'm at and the path I'm on, even if I'm still not fully sure on exactly where it's going. You could say I have some of that seemingly nonchalant energy of my mid-20s again. Although this time, I'm not completely in despair at the thought that I'm the only one who hasn't got everything together, because now I know we're all in the same boat. And I guess we each just have to figure things out as we go.